So welcome to this third session for our Power BI introduction course. Today, we'll learn about measures. So that's kind of the last main functionality that's going to enable you to build powerful, interactive, automated reports with Power BI. That's the whole point of it. We'll learn also how to add some groupings. So you get some data from your database, and there's already some fields that allows you to do groupings. For instance, for call contacts, what type of requests? So was that a call for information, for admission requests, or other types? So you have some columns that gives you some types. But sometimes you'd like other types of groupings that were not that are not automatically generated from your database extracts. So how to add that, and then we're going to do some more of like the easy stuff. So we have some harder stuff, measures, and creating new columns. For grouping purposes, for example, and some easy stuff about other basic formatting functionalities. And the whole point of building Power BI reports is that once you've built something, from now on, every month or every week, the update process is going to be so easy. So that's what we're going to touch base on. And that's only going to be a minute of the course, because that's the whole thing. Updating your report is only going to take a minute from now on. There's a take-home after today. I invite you to practice this amazing update process. And we're going to touch base on the fact that how about somebody built a report and then they share it to you. And that might be something that you can do among yourselves. Maybe in one shelter, there's going to be an analyst out there that will have more time and may build something using outcome tracker extract. Well, that report can be shared among yourselves, and then you just upload your own data in it, and you're going to have your report. So that's it. So that's the plan for today. Now, I repeat that you've had files through this course. So a zipped file named course files was sent out. In it, you have all the content for 3 sessions. And under session 3, there was a handout for today that I'll refer myself to during the session. And the data we're going to be using is located in that data folder. So under course files, session 3, and data folder, you'll have the files for today. But prior to jumping today, let's take a look at the take home 2. So after session 2, you were invited to do a small homework and try to build this chart that we see here that you had in the session 2 handout. So starting from the report we had built in session 2, you were asked to deliver this chart. So I'm going to go through those steps. So ending session 2, when we left last session, that's what our report looked like. And I'm going to go through, I'm going to add a new page just because this page is already quite busy. So to build a new chart, I'll be able to do it on the new page. We can better assess what I'm doing. So instructions were again, just bring in another extract of outcome tracker that went about the children admissions. So you should get that routine in by now. So take home 2 was about get data CSV file, then find a file in the course files, session 2, take home, and there was the file. So once you find the file in your directories, you see a sample of it. It looks good. I always hit transform data. So then it opens up my Power Query editor, and then I see on the left-hand side that I'm currently positioned on children admitted 2019-2020. That's the file that I'm trying to bring in. And now it's showing me the whole extract, just the way it comes out of my database. So what I was invited to do is transform this by keeping only a few columns. So I kept only the columns that I needed to. So system ID, when were they admitted or discharged? And I guess that's the only thing that I need to do this report. Yeah, so to do this report, that's the only thing that I needed, because all I want to do is count how many children I got admitted and how long did they stay. So I right-click to remove other columns. So the remove other columns is either available under a right-click or the button we are used to using at the top. If I zoom out here, or I can use it from the upper menu, remove column, and I select remove others. So both work out fine. Then about renaming columns, I can call this child admitted. And then I was invited to create a column for how long is my stay in days. And we had done that in session 2. So adding a column, I need to refer myself to my upper menu, and I go to the third ribbon, add a column, and then I can add a custom column. I'm going to get a pop-up window, so I'll zoom on that. In that pop-up, what's going to be the name of my column? So it's going to be stay in days. And how do I calculate it? Well, discharge, I'll double click on discharge date minus double click on admission date. That's my formula. No errors. I love it. I do OK. So now a fourth column has been added. So that was not listed in the steps. But what you need to do before you leave here is always make sure that the data type is valid for each column. So here my stay in days that I just created is listed as ABC123 data type. So this means like not defined. So here, like we did in session 2, by making it a whole number, I'll be able to make calculations with it. So it probably worked out, even though if you didn't do that step, but sometimes it would not. So better off always defining the data type to make sure. So that was it. And if I like, I could make that name shorter, just small cosmetic, but it would not have been mandatory. So how do I get out of here? Well, I need to go back to the home ribbon, and now I have my close and apply. So that's great. So now on my right-hand side, I can see that children admitted has now been uploaded, though I cannot use that in combination with the other tables that I already have prior to going into relationship mode. So from the left-hand side, I picked the relationship, and now I see my children admitted standing alone out there. So how do I attach it to everything else? Well, I'll use the same logic as when I attached my women admitted, my mothers. I attached it to calendar with the admission date. So I'll do so here again. So I grab admission date and let it drop on calendar date. So this was relationship. Then some modeling. So I'll go in data view from my left-hand side. And here what I see is my calendar. So I don't want to work with that. I'll go to children admitted. So from the right menu, I select children admitted. And now I see that table. So what do I want to do? Well, I can get rid of both dates by hiding, because all I'll be working with is my stay in days and children admitted. So my children admitted, I'll want to do counting the rows. Okay, this is their ID, which is a number in the thousands. So I don't want to be doing a sum. So I'm up here and I need to change the default summarization to count for children. And now stay in days. I need again to change the default summarization to average, because that's what I want to display in my chart. And now I was ready to add a visual, so I go to report view. So I'm on a blank page. I always like to click once in the white of my canvas. And I'm now ready to add a chart. So I'll zoom on this side of the screen. So I wanted stacked columns and line. So as per the instructions, what I saw was that we had months on the axis. So calendar, and I'm gonna bring months to the axis. Then for columns, I had my women admitted. I'm gonna drag and drop women admitted into columns, and I can drag and drop a second one. And let's see the result. Looks good. So I'm getting how many women in that month, and then how many children came with it. So for a total of over 20 people that came in that month. And now I was asked, oh, I'll keep my selection. So there's a line around it. And now I also need to add lines. So line, I'm gonna bring my stay in days for women and stay in days for children. To succeed, take home number 2. This is how the fields needs to be filled here in the visualizations panel. So there was one challenge, is that currently our chart has 2 lines called stay in days. And I cannot easily make the distinction between the 2. So you were invited on the handout. You were invited to take a look at online documentation. And that link took you to the Power BI community. So I'm going to show you the web page where we are. So that community, this is amazing. So there's a forum where people, any people, nobodies and somebodies may post questions. So there's, Power BI was launched in 2016. So you can imagine there's like hundreds of thousands of posts on that forum already. So simply Googling issues, you'll often be referred to the Microsoft Power BI community website. And then you may find solutions. So how does that website work? Is somebody here in BAL wrote down a question that they had the same issue. They used a column, and then they didn't like the name of that column, how it was displayed in the visual. So then go to solutions, you can click on that, but actually the solution has a green check mark and is always listed right below the problem. So this means that Inbal, who posed the question, Inbal selected that answer as being the proper answer. So you can do this in the visualizations. Right click on the name of the column in the values. So see here, we recognize our right panel for visualizations, and the person, I'm gonna zoom in. So the person is positioned on values. And now that I have here a column that I wanna rename, so that column I can see here from the left, that this column came from a table and was actually listed as article, but then by doing a right click over here, it could get renamed. And then it's gonna change the display in my visual. So let's try and do this. So we just saw is out here. So that's the name of the column as it comes from my database. But if I simply right click on it, I have a rename option. And now I could list it as woman. And the other one, rename. Voila. So what we see here in our chart is that the stay-in days for children is way longer. So we can assume that their mothers stayed with them, and that probably mothers with children stay longer than the average of all women together. And before I take a look at the chat, I'm gonna just pursue with doing just some formatting. So just a review on formatting, my chart is selected. I go to the right-hand side under the paintbrush, and then I can make some transformations to my axis. One thing I don't like to be told on the x-axis that those are months. So I'll remove the title for the x-axis. For the y-axis, what I'll do is I'll put those on a secondary axis. So I have a better view. Okay, let's zoom out. So currently see my columns are so tiny. So I'm gonna put my average stay-in days on a secondary axis. Secondary axis, show. And now voila, the two are separated. And I can review my whole chart title. To call this admission and average stay-in days for women and children. Voila. So that was the target for take home 2. So obviously I did this very quickly, but just as you have the recording of the solution, I'll take a look here. Why are the months not in the proper order? Well, they are in the proper order because in session 2, we wanted it to be that way. We are working with a fiscal calendar. So when we brought a calendar table, so I'm gonna take a look at our calendar. So when we brought a calendar table, we have all dates listed, and we generated information about fiscal months, stating that July is the 4th month of our fiscal year and is in Q2. And you have all that information listed. And what we had done is our column with the month name. We made sure with using this button, sort by, we made sure that it was sorted in the order of fiscal months. So as you see here, July, the information coming from the column fiscal month number is number 4. So July should be the 4th one listed on our chart. If I go back here, yes, so my fiscal year starts April, July is 4th month, and it ends in March. So this was a resolution of take home 2. So let's get going on today's target. So I'm gonna save this and close it. Yes. This is what we want to build today. So you don't have that because this is what you'll have in an hour. So today I want to build, we're going to build, it's going to seem like this is the same thing. Like we've building a chart about my calls and how many turnaway calls I had, and then the call average length. But this time you're going to learn that those can be done with measures and how useful measures are going to end up being. So I'm going to bring this down, and I now invite you, if you want to tag along and try and perform the exercises with me, to open your Power BI desktop, and myself, I'm going to open a new blank report. Okay, so just before I jump in, I'm going to answer 2 questions from the chat. So, Lamiot, somebody's asking, saying, when I got an extract from Outcome Tracker, it didn't look exactly like mine. So, to some extent, I wonder if Janine can offer you technical support regarding the Outcome Tracker extracts. So I worked with her, and she informed me that the sample of the extract that she sent out to me, any shelter should be able to pull that out. So that's why I'm using those types of extracts. So maybe ask Katie or Janine that I worked with on pulling out from the Outcome Tracker. But today, like I'm giving, during this session, I got data files that look like what you can get from Outcome Tracker. So we talk some language that is relevant to you guys. But obviously, Power BI, you can do this with anything, with any type of data. And if your extract is not exactly like the one I was getting, well, then when you are in the Power Query editor, you simply keep relevant columns, and then hopefully can redo the exercises. And yes, so in here in the chat, you now have the email for Janine, who can help you find proper database extract for Outcome Tracker. Then I'll take a sneak peek back at the take home 2. Oh no, I closed it. So I'm gonna open just the take home 2, because somebody mentioned So yeah, on the instructions that I sent out, there was a title for my secondary axis. So I'll select the chart and go into formatting, the y-axis, and then I'm going to scroll down. So here title is on for my column axis. And then if I go down to secondary, I scroll down and now I have the option of title off. When I was in 4 minutes ago, that's sometimes a tiny glitch. At first, when I activated, I'm going to zoom in. At first, when I activated show secondary axis, all those options weren't all listed. But getting out of that menu and then coming back, then all the possibilities are listed. And the one at the bottom is add the title to the right axis. So now this is exactly the one you had on the take-home 2 with a spelling mistake corrected. So let's get rid of this. Great. So this is where we're now going today. So new material, we want to build something called measures, which is going to enable us to build those two charts, which looks the same, but are different than what we did before. So starting from scratch, this is a blank new report. And what I'll do is close here this yellow pop-up that I always get. And I always like also to collapse my filters panel so I have more space to work around. So let's go and do a full cycle again. So you should start to master this. So I'm going to bring a calendar file, and I'm going to bring something that looks like a call contact report from my outcome tracker database. So same as we already did. Get data. And now first bring the Excel file, which has my fiscal calendar in it. And I'm gonna go to course files, section 3, today's data, and the Excel calendar is the only one we have in there. When you bring an Excel file, you are asked to select the table or the sheet, because an Excel file can always have multiple information in it. So I'm going to select sheet 1. So once it is selected, my transform button is now available. So you need the check mark in front of sheet 1 and then always hit transform data. And it opens up your Power Query editor. Remember, if you can't find it, at the bottom where you have your Power BI icon, sometimes it gets hidden behind, but by selecting it, it takes you to it. And if you made the mistake to click load, well, by using this button, transform, you can always go to transform data, and it's gonna open your Power Query editor window. So when I'm here, I'm gonna replicate the steps we did last time. So which columns do I wanna keep? So I'm gonna keep only the columns with fiscal information. So the whole dates, and then hold down the control key. Fiscal month number, month, quarter, and the last year, which are my fiscal years. So the two columns that I'm getting rid of are very useful in the Excel file to generate my fiscal columns, but I don't need it as I'm working in Power BI, because I want to display everything in fiscal order. So now let's use the new button we just learned today. A little shortcut to doing a right click on my columns. I get the most popular buttons listed. So remove other columns is the third one. So you have all the buttons at the top, but doing the right click is interesting because you have the most popular one. We discussed the other time that when I'm bringing in Excel files, it's sometimes bringing empty rows at the bottom. So to make sure there's no empty rows at the bottom, I go on one specific column. So let's use the fiscal month column. So this column, there should be a value listed everywhere. So when I select the column, I click on the arrow in that column. And this enables me to load more, because at first it's seeing only 12-month numbers. But once it really goes through the whole file, yes, there were some rows where the month number was not listed. So I need to get rid of those rows. It means those are empty rows. So that's the transformations that I need to do for my calendar. Oh, and obviously changing the name of it. So careful here, as we learned. On the left-hand side, my query name is going to become my table name. So sheet 1, that's not too relevant. I'm going to call it calendar.
Oh, there you are. Hi. Good. I'm the only one here, so I work with the lights off. Yeah.
So Katie, now that you're not alone anymore, you may mute yourself because you are now recorded in the video. So that's the steps that I need to do with my calendar, same steps we did last week. And now I'm ready to close and apply. So that was loading the calendar. We see it on the side. I'll validate if we have a question. And we are ready to upload another one. The same type of extract, the one about information for all the calls we get. So let's do this. Get data, and now we pick CSV. Browsing your computer, we're gonna pick in session 3 data folder, the call contact report. When we bring a CSV file, that's different from an Excel file. A CSV file only has one page. So we don't need to select sheet 1. By default, the CSV only has one sheet. So yet we see a sample, validate this is what we want to upload, and always transform data. That's the button you want to hit. I'm back to Power Query Editor. On the left-hand side, I see the calendar query that I previously created, and I see my call contact report grayed out on the left side because that's where I'm positioned, and I can make some transformations to that file. Again, I'm going to keep only a few columns. So system name ID, yes, I want to keep that because that's going to be useful to count the rows, to count the calls. So hold down your control key on the keyboard. Control key allows me to select also date, length of call, just right next to it. And then I use the bar at the bottom to scroll so I can find type of requests. And I must scroll further to find the admitted column. So admitted column must be around the 10th column or maybe a little further. So once I've selected them all, I'll use the bar at the bottom to scroll back to the left to validate that all the columns that I want to keep are yellowed out. So I have admitted, type of requests, which differentiates which type of calls it was. And then scrolling back, the first 3 columns that I wanted, number 1, 2, 3, and 4. The other columns I wanted to keep. So right click on a column. So you have most popular buttons like the remove other columns. So I'm down to 5 columns. That's cool. So just like we did last week, I'm going to rename my columns. So I'm going to rename my system name ID simply calls. So when I count on that column, it's going to show me how many calls I got. And here, that length of call column, the naming was too long. I didn't like that. So simply rename it to call length. And my query, so that could be a cute name. It's not that bad. But I'm going to rename it to simply call contacts. Voila. A practice very popular that we have among Power BI users is very often to put a plural name for the query, the table, and then singular words for the columns. So it's just thinking how it's going to be being displayed in your visuals. So yes, here I put plural because when I'll put this to a visual and it's just going to say calls, well, I'll be quickly able to assume that it means the number of calls. But putting call length in a visual, it makes more sense to have it singular. It's going to be the average call length. So having that in mind when I do my naming. So that's it. So those were basic transformations, same as we did last week. So close and apply. So I'm very close to being able to start creating my report yet. Mandatory steps, we have it on the handout. Number 1B, relationships. So here, I go to model view. And now I have those 2 tables. That's my calendar, and it should be attached to the other one. So simply drag and drop. So I'm going to grab the date in one of the 2 boxes and drop it on the date in the other one. So that's that. So that's going to allow me to have fiscal values on axis and then be able to calculate for my fiscal periods. My fiscal periods are generated by the calendar, and I'll be able to count the admissions or get the average call length. I'll take a look at the chat. We have a question. So bye, Katie. Now you're all alone, left with me, you guys. So let's pursue. Modeling. So I go on the right-hand side to data view, and I'm going to go through my columns. Building my charts. I won't be displaying the date. So I can hide in report view my date column. and hide my fiscal month number. I needed both of those to do a relationship, and here's going to be useful for sorting, but that won't be used in my tables or charts. Month, so these, if I don't do anything, they're going to get sorted by alphabetical order, because to Power BI, these are only words. You can see up here, yes, this column is called months, but it is simply text in it. Power BI, if it's a text column, it's going to get sorted in alphabetical order, unless I use this very useful, well hidden button that I need to remember of, sort by, and I'm going to sort it by fiscal month number. So this way, July is going to be the fourth one. So that was fixing calendar. I need to go to the right-hand side and click on call contacts. Once I click on my call contacts table, it is now being displayed. So I can zoom on it and do any transformations I need to do. My calls column. These are numbers. So by default, Power BI will attempt to do the sum of those, but I'd rather count each rows to get my calls count. Date, I'm gonna hide that. Call length. So call length, that's a number. And for the purpose of my report, what I'll do most of the time is the average for that. So here, the default summarization, I'm gonna change it to average. And that's it. The two other ones are just going to be useful for filtering purpose, but no transformation needs to be done. I am ready to build a report and learn about measures. How to do so? Well, let's create a first chart. Actually, we'll build two charts today to start. So I click on the white. Okay, yes, just before we let's build a chart, and I'll answer your question, Sadhana. So here, I'm gonna bring column charts, okay? So very basic, my column chart. And now I'm gonna pick months. It's gonna be added to the axis. And under call contacts, I'm gonna pick calls. So just building a basic column chart. So this is how many calls I got of all types per month. See that to build this chart, I used information coming from two different files. I have an Excel file that has my fiscal information, which allows me to have my month names listed in my fiscal order. So I'm happy, I want to have that on my axis. So I need that information to come from somewhere. That's why I'm bringing my calendar table. And then I want to calculate how many calls I got. So that information comes from my database. It comes from another file. So those two files, to be tied together, they need to know how are they tied together. Because here on the axis, April, that's coming from calendar. And here the value, 59 calls, that's coming from the other table. So what does the relationship do? I put month on the axis. And now Power BI, I asked Power BI, how many calls did I get? So then Power BI, mechanically what it does, it says, okay, so first of all, we have a first month is April. So for April, what are all the dates matching April? Well, April 1st to April 30th. Okay, those dates. Use the relationship. And over here in call contacts, keep only the dates of April 1st to April 30th. And once that's done, so that's what the relationship does. The relationship actually acts as filtering functionality. So, and filtering functionality for each parts of a chart. So now for the April column, it keeps only the dates of April, and afterwards is able to count how many calls happen only for the rows matching April dates. And then to build the second column in my chart, the month is May. So Power BI in this table can figure out that the May dates are May 1st to May 31st, filters the call contact table, and now is able to find how many calls only for May matching dates. So that is like a brand new concept, a brand new way of looking at data, and it takes time to grasp it. Okay, it took me time to grasp it. If I just explain it and now you understand it and remember all of it and can explain it to other people, well, you're smarter than I. Okay, so fortunately you'll have this video recorded. You can listen back in loop from time to time to this little 2 minutes of explanation, and eventually that might sink in. But that's the logic of it. So let's build the second chart, and I'm going to show you that you can do copy paste also in Power BI. We just love the copy paste. We do it every day. So I select my chart, so call per month, and now I just do like usual, so Control C, and I click somewhere else and Control V. And now you can see that a new chart has been created. So I'm going to redo it. So I have one chart selected. I do Control C. Make sure you click in the white and then Control V. Right? And deleting a chart, well, while it's selected, it's simply delete. So what I want to show you today is to do our charts Monday in session 2. What we did is we brought in 2 extracts from our database. One extract that has all the information about all the calls, and then another one where we had only residential turnaways. But actually, in the file I currently have, so I'm going to show you here, that's my call contact. I have all that information. So for my residential calls, I know if they've been admitted or not admitted. Okay, voila. So here's my first non-admitted residential request. So that information is there in the chart. So why bring a second extract? Well, I don't need to, okay, unless I don't know how to use measures. So let's take a look at what's happening. So I'm in report view. So I have a chart and I have columns where I have all the calls. So I want that. And then here, my second chart, I would like to see only the turnaways. Well, I need to apply filtering. So I'm going to expand my filter panel. And my filter panel, so it allows me, if I read here, filters on this visual, I could do some things about my calls column or my month values to exclude maybe some months. No, what I want here is to keep only my turnaways. So I'm gonna drag and drop. Let me take a look. I drag admitted and I drop it here. Okay, so now I just collapsed it. So now under filters for visual, there is the option to filter on the information about were they admitted or not. So when that admitted or not is expanded, I can simply check mark not admitted. And now the chart that I had copy paste is different than the neighbor. So here in April, I got 8 calls that ended up not admitted for a total of 59 calls. So I can find my turnaway information inside that one data source that I have. So the issue is currently you don't have the knowledge to put both of them in the same chart. Having those columns side by side. So I would like to have both of them. In April, I had 59, and I'd like to see here a tiny column next to it showing me that only 8 were not admitted. So using filters, so I'll select on this second chart here, using filters, that's good. But the filter is on the whole chart. Cannot be on only the seconds, only on every 2 column being in my chart. So this is why use measures will save me. So I'm gonna get rid of that second chart where or I can keep it. I was just gonna move it to the side. And my goal here is to have a chart where I can have those 2 values in it. So let's do so. Building a measure, what does it mean? So it's happening out here. Okay. Where do I have access to do this? When I get close on the right-hand side to my call contacts table, when I click on the 3 dots, there's a menu, new measures. So when I click on it, on the right-hand side below call contacts, I now have something called measure, and it has a calculator icon. Okay, and furthermore, at the top, a formula bar has appeared. So I'm able to program formulas. Okay, so today we're going to learn to program very basic ones, but afterwards the possibilities are endless. So what am I going to type in my formula bar? Well, what I want to do now is I'm going to create 2 formulas. One that is going to give me my calls count for all possible calls, and another one that's going to count only the turnaways. So let's do the first very basic one. So first thing, you cannot keep the measure word. You need to give it a name. So the name of my measure is going to be calls count. 2 words too similar. feel like I keep saying cow. Okay, calls count. So that's going to be the name of this new formula that I'm programming. And what's going to be the formula? Well, so the programming language is called DAX. So don't worry, if you've been using Excel, it's very often the same words, the same function names. So what I'll be doing is, as I start typing, and Power BI has pop-up menus helping you out as you go along. So what I want to do is count how many calls I'm getting. So with that, as I start typing, is there a function maybe that does counting? Then it's listing me all the possible ones. So I like count, so I'm going to select it. So if I hit enter or double click on it with my mouse, it's going to select the function. When the function is selected, it opens up the parenthesis, and then there's a new pop-up telling you, this formula, you should put a column as the item inside of the formula. And what is it going to do? It's going to count the numbers appearing. So it's going to count the values that we have in that column. So I'm going to go in my calls column. So as I start typing calls, so it's showing me everywhere I have something about call. So when I typed only call singular, it's listing all the possibilities for my table call contacts. But once I put an S, it's showing me that, oh yes, you have a column named calls. So I can double click on it, and now it's listed. So when I refer myself to a column, I must always list first in which table it is. So that's the name of my table, of my file called contacts. And you can see that it was put between a single quotation mark. So that is the symbol to identify a table name. And afterwards, calls, my column, then that one was put in between brackets. So brackets is the symbol to identify columns. So now I'm going to close the parenthesis. So I'm going to hit enter or hit the check mark. So left to your formula bar, there's a check mark. So now this formula has been saved. So what am I telling Power BI? So I'm telling my software, if ever I want to see calls count in a chart, well, the action that's going to be needed to be done is counting on the calls column. So that's done. So now I'm going to click in the white so that formula bar disappear. And now let's select our bar chart, column chart, and let's make it clustered columns. So I have a bar chart selected, and I'll make it clustered bars. So because I'd like to have a few bars side by side. So when we built that chart earlier on, we brought months to the axis and then calls to values. And calls, if I click on the drop down arrow here, I can see a check mark beside count because we modeled our data and we said that on that column, most of the time I should be counting. So that's a really good way to get that column in. Okay, that's still valid and it's all good. Now let's see the difference. On my right hand side, I can see now my measure with the calculator icon. Here it used to be written measure, but I renamed it to call contacts, calls count. So let's drag and drop this next to calls. So those two should do exactly the same. And that's what I'm getting. Okay, so for the moment, I just taught you how to create a measure and it was completely useless. You were able to get exactly the same reason in a much easier way. Okay, so the light blue column, this is simply by dragging your calls column to the value field and you got it in your chart, and that's a good way. So for you to understand what a measure is, I had you replicate exactly the same behavior, but now with a measure. So by building a measure is telling Power BI, once I bring this measure to a chart, the calculation you should be doing is the formula that I gave. And now I just gave exactly the same formula that we gave to it by bringing the whole column. Okay, those are exactly the same. So at this point, what we learned seems useless. So let's build another one. So building measures, it starts on the right hand side, close to my call contacts table. When I click on the three dots, I can select new measure. When I do so, see now I have measure listed again on the right hand side. So there's now a second calculator icon because I'm about to give Power BI information about another formula. And now I go all the way up left to my measure formula bar, giving it a name. So how about counting the turnaways? So turnaways count. Oh, that's why maybe measures might be useful. Because I want in the same chart to count all calls, and then I want the little column next to it to be only my turnaways. But I wasn't able to do that with the knowledge that I had. I was limited. But I can write down a formula that's going to include a filter criteria. So let's do this. You're going to learn. So I just told you the functions you know in Excel, you'll be able to use them. Yet there are a few new ones that you should learn. One important one is calculate. So I start typing calculate, and now it is being suggested to me. I double click on it because I'm lazy. And then the whole word is now displayed with the open parenthesis. And calculate, in here, I can calculate what it does. Calculate something with a tweak. Okay, so it can be any type of filtering, but sometimes it's not only filtering. It can be other stuff that maybe by digging further online, you may discover. So what I'd like, and you can add spaces. So just to make it more readable, improve readability, I'm gonna add a space. So what I'd like to do is calculate counting all the calls again. So I'm gonna say call. And as I type call, I see here listed, recognize the measure icon. It's gonna show me the measure that I previously created. So yeah, that's exactly that same calculation. Counting the call, that other formula that I gave you. I'm gonna add a comma. Again, I'm adding spaces just so that it's more readable. And I'm gonna give it the filtering criteria. So on my column admitted, I wanna keep only what is not admitted. So as I start typing admitted, there's only one possibility that is allowed in the formula is my column admitted. And I say I want this to equal. And now I need to have exactly the same spelling that I have in my database. So the end, how it is spelled is not admitted. So, ooh, when I'm getting all that red underlying, I know something wrong is happening. So what I'm trying to do here is tell Power BI on the column non-admitted, I want it to equal the value of not admitted. So anytime I'm specifying the specific value to be used in my filter, I should put it in between quotation marks. When it is text. If I was doing a filtering saying, keep only the values that equal 2, well, I would have put the number 2 and that would have been fine. But for word filtering, I need to put it in between quotation mark. And I close the parenthesis. So that is a calculate formula. Calculate has 2 elements. First, I'm asking Power BI to calculate something. And here I referred myself to the previous measure. I could have wrote again, count on the column calls, which we're gonna do later on. But first I refer myself to the other measure I created. And then I say, do some filtering on the admitted column. The column is displayed with brackets. Keep only the not admitted. So check mark. So hit enter or hit check mark so that it's getting saved. I'll check in the chat if you were trying to get this formula going with me and having issues. It is quite picky. Okay, if you're missing the comma in the middle, won't work. If you're missing a parenthesis, won't work. So no question with regards to measures for the moment. So this new measure that we created, let's add it to our chart. So my chart is selected, the one that has the call counts twice. And now on the right hand side for visualizations, I can add my other measure, return aways. So I'll drag and drop and I'll add it at the bottom. So now I'll have a chart with 3 columns for each month. And what values am I getting? So my turn away, here I got 8. Here I had 8 also. In May, 11. And I had 11 also. Okay, so now that I have validated that my 2 measures are working, I'm gonna get rid of the first calls column. So the first 2 here, calls and calls count, they're both doing the same. So I'll keep only the 2 measures that I built to be in my chart. So I hit the check mark and now calls has disappeared. And voila, I was able, with only 1 extract, that here the light blue column, this is counting my calls. And this one, it's counting the call, but with a factoring criteria on it. Okay. So if you're missing out the months, here, you must have months in the axis. So check your chart should be selected. And then I dragged and dropped months from calendar on the axis. And then you have calls count and turn away count. So you have 3 things to build this chart. So we're gonna do the same, and I'd like us to get now the average call length. So I'll get rid of this chart that was useful to validate our turnaway values, but that we don't need anymore. So let's redo the process of creating measures, and then we can add it to a chart. So I would like to do something similar we did in session 2, is looking at the average call length. So my table contains the call length for all calls. So how about I would have 2 lines, one displaying for all the calls and the other one only for the one turn away. So let's build the measures, because we know now we have 2 types of information in one chart. I'll be needing measures. So let's take a look. Right hand side, beside my call contacts, I'll get a new measure. So beside the table call contacts, I click on the 3 dots and I'm able to select new measure. I now have a formula bar on the upper left corner. So I'm gonna call this, just for saving space, AVG call length. So what's my average call length? Basic formula. So maybe you can be all wild and guess what function I'm gonna use. It's quite likely it's gonna be something about average. So the average is gonna return me the average of all the numbers found in a column. So that's what I want. So double click, because I'm lazy. And now the word is all written down and parenthesis is open. And I need to select a column. So I can start typing. So the options will be reduced in my list. Or since my list is very small, I can see right away my call length column and I can select it. Remember to close the parenthesis. And that's it. This is gonna enable me to put this in a visual and then get the result of the average found in column call length. So check mark. Woohoo! And this has been created. So I'm gonna go assess situation on the right-hand side. And I see now a third calculator icon. And if I stretch, remember we did this, I think again in session 2, I'm gonna expand the width of my fields menu. Voila. So now I see all the words. When my mouse cursor has double arrows side to side, I can grab the border and expand it. So before we do the chart, let's do right away the other formula to do the other call length average. So beside call contacts, there's 3 dots, and I'm going to do new measure. I'm going to go to my formula bar, upper right left corner. Measure, I'm going to call this ABG, turn away, call length. Okay, so I want to do a basic calculation, but apply a filter criteria on it. So I can do this with calculate. So I need to type calculate and open the parenthesis. So again, I could refer myself to the other formula that I just built, or I can type it from scratch again. And that's what we're going to do. So we're doing just a little different than what we did previously. So I'm going to retype from scratch that what should be calculated is using the average function. So I opened up the, I typed in the average function again, and I'm going to select again the call length column. So I double clicked in the list. Remember to close the parenthesis. So in calculate, I can insert another function. So I'm telling the system, you'll have to calculate the average on my call length column, add your comma, and I'm just adding spaces so it's more readable. But as you do so, don't do this. If I stop here, it's simply going to do the same as the formula we just typed in. Now I'm going to add my filtering criteria. Filtering is going to be go on the admitted column. I start typing admitted, and now I'm able to select it. So go to the table, call contacts on the column admitted, and equal. I'm gonna add my quotation marks right away. So quotation marks can be sometimes on number 2 or sometimes on your period key, if you were finding it earlier. Not admitted. Closing the parenthesis. So inside the calculate, I have a first formula about average, and then the comma and my filtering criteria. So I can do check mark and I'll take a look. My chat, no, all good. So I'm ready to get this displayed in a line chart. So click in the white of your canvas. I'm gonna get line chart. And remember to select month. So I need to have the month on the axis. And then I'll bring my two AVG measures. So I can drag and drop, or actually, since they are measures, just putting my check mark, Power BI will add those two values. So for my line chart, I will have both average measures displayed per month on the axis. Let's take a look. Woohoo! I'm gonna move my chart around just to have them side by side. And now I can see that when it's a turn away, my calls are a little shorter. Great. We're gonna explore, I think, something new. I think we did not cover slicers until now. So make sure you click in the white of your canvas. And we're gonna add a slicer for the types of requests. So in my visualizations panel, I'm looking for the slicer. It is the icon that has a filter on it. So that's a slicer. In a slicer, by default, you can put only one thing, and it is gonna be my types of requests. So your last choice under the fields, type of requests, I'm gonna add this, and it's gonna create a slicer for me. So what's the whole purpose of this? I can resize it, and I'll move it next to it. So what's gonna happen? Well, maybe you're seeing me where I'm getting to. So currently I have all the calls, but how about looking only at my residential admission requests? Because the field not admitted, I think that maybe for most of you guys is mainly filled with regards to residential admission requests. So that's the whole point of a slicer. So now I can select, so see here, when I go on crisis support, the field, there was never something identified as not admitted. Just the crisis support call happened, and we didn't tag whether it was admitted or not. So that is the purpose of having a slicer on your chart. It allows you to then filter both charts. By the way, we haven't saved our file yet, so I really don't like that. So let's save our file, upper left corner, and simply save it somewhere relevant in your directories. Okay, so two other topics that I want to cover today. How about adding a custom column that's going to enable me to do some grouping. So that's fortunate. I had that type of request field and it allows me to filter my data. But sometimes I'd like to see some groupings that were not originally generated in my data. So let's explore this with the children admission extract. So I'm actually kind of do something completely different at the bottom with another extract. So let's do this. Get data, that's where it's happening. CSV file. The new topic, we're going to bring a new file in. CSV file. Where is it? In session 3, data, my children admitted. So get it, you see the sample, and you want to hit transform. So we're going to learn new functionalities in Power Query Editor. So we brought this new file. Again, I'm going to keep only 4 columns. And actually, just for the, let's do so. Okay, so I want to keep the system name ID and then both dates. And I'm going to go way at the end and I keep age at intake. So I have the age at intake, and if I scroll back, I have the other 3 columns yellowed out, system name ID and the dates. So I'm happy. I'm going to right click on a column to remove others. System name ID. I'd rather see children admitted. Voila. So that's stuff that we've learned already. Okay, keeping only the columns you need, and if preferred, renaming columns. How about, I would like to see how many children I admitted in the groupings of infant, toddler, and regular child. Okay, because maybe this has an impact on me. When I'm getting infants or toddlers, maybe I don't need the same bedding. So let's take a look at this. I have the age. So working out with conditions, I could say that if it is 1 year old or less, then it's an infant. 2, 3 years old are toddlers, and then my children's are 4 and up. So let's get this created. So I'm gonna zoom on upper left. So it is gonna be happening in adding a column. So I'm gonna add a column where I have the options, toddler, infant, and child. And I'm gonna use the button, create a conditional column. Voila, here's the pop-up you get. So to add a conditional column, we're gonna give it a name, which is gonna be our child group. And what about the conditions? So let's start with on which column can we make any logical decision to define what's the child group. So it's gonna be on age at intake. So with the drop down button, I get age at intake as the column. And do I want it to be equal? No, I'm gonna say is less than or equal to. So here I pick the last choice, less than or equal to 1. And then it should be infant. So when that condition is met, the output is going to be infant. So click on the button, add clause, and this is going to add another line. So repeat the steps. Afterwards, if it is not less or equal to 1, the age at intake. If it is less or equal to 3, I'm going to call this toddler. Add another clause. If the age at intake is less or equal to, let's put 99. Always try and plan for awkward value. But if it was tagged as a children, admitted, then I still want to keep it as a child. And if those criteria are not met, so else, let's put a null value. So then you would have a fourth grouping that is, for some reason, you had a value that is not between 0 and 99, then it would be a separate group. So hopefully you were able to create this one, and let's do OK. And now it has added a column. What if, when I display this in my report, I don't want those words to appear in alphabetical order, because it's going to be child, infant, toddler. Obviously, I'd like those words to appear in a logical way. Infant, toddler, child. So I'm planning ahead, and I know that. So I will need to create another column enabling me to sort those values. So that's going to be a nice opportunity to redo one more time how to create a conditional column. So I want another one. So let's do this. Under my menu, add column, I'm going to click again for conditional column. And I'm going to call this group sort. So that's not too important, the name you give to that column. It's for it to be relevant to you. And we're going to replicate exactly the same conditions. So if the age at intake is less or equal to 1, so same condition. So those are going to be infant. So I'm going to type in number 1, because when I sort those values, I want infant to be listed first. I clicked add clause, and now I can do age at intake less or equal to 3, and that's my second grouping, the toddlers. Last one, I did 99 years old is going to be my third grouping. Always plan for an else scenario of corrupted data that should be grouped under a a fourth grouping, number 4, my null. So the first selections is a replication of on what we did, but now we want to generate number 1, 2, 3 in our column. So let's do OK. Ta-da! So now we'll be able to use the sort by button to say in which order the child group should be displayed. Before leaving, you would always want each column to have a proper data type. So child group is text, so you should be displaying ABC, and group sort is numbers, so it should be 1, 2, 3. So how do I get out? Well, I need to go back to home menu, and then I find my close and apply. Let's hit this. Okay. So children admission data has been added, though it needs to be attached to something, especially if I'll want to show information by time. So good practice. So if I count my children admitted per month, I'll use the admission date. So admission date and be drag and drop on date. So that's a quick relationship created. And then let's take a look in data view. So how do I get it displayed in data view? From your right-hand side, select your children admitted, and now it is being displayed. What should I do? Children admitted, that column, I want to count on it. So I won't be building measures for that one. We'll simply ask children admitted to be count. And I can hide the other ones. So I won't be needing the dates. I won't be needing the age. And I won't be needing the group sort to do my, so it can be hidden, okay? It's just hidden. Yet, one last thing I want to do is my child group, where I have the words. So the groupings I just created, I'm going to use that great sort by button to say sorted by group sort. Okay, so now it is grayed out. My words for child groups are going to be sorted in the order of the 1, 2, 3 columns. So result, let's build a small bar chart to see this. So click on the white, and now I'm gonna select the bar chart, and what I'd like, I'll go down to children admitted. So see how nice, since I hid a few columns, I just see this. So when I'm working, so that's the whole purpose of hiding columns, is when I'm working to build my report, I only see what I need. So my child groups, I'll put it on the axis, and how many children were admitted, I'll put this as a value. That's what I want to have for my bar chart. And what's the result? So 4 infants were admitted in the period of time that we have, which is currently 3 months. Okay, toddlers and child. And they are sorted in logical age groups order. So I'll do a small save. Wahoo! So only 15 minutes left. So I'll go a little faster because we have 3 topics to cover. And one of them is the report formatting, which is to me, to some extent, some arts and crafts. So I'll invite you to simply watch the demo, and I'll simply show a few main functionalities that you can explore and understand on your own, except the first one. So the first one is mandatory and very important, just for, I'd say, quality purpose, okay? This report that you created, you're gonna send it out to people afterwards. And your people, when they'll look at the chart, they'll click everywhere, just because people are like that, clicking, okay? By default, everything is interacting together in your report, meaning if I click on April in the first chart, so I just clicked, maybe it's by mistake, but, or maybe I was just wondering what would happen. But let's say my end user, by mistake, click on April. Then suddenly, the chart next to it only has 1 value in it. That's awkward. Like you very rarely want a line chart to suddenly have only 1 value displayed. And what happened to this chart at the bottom? Well, this was completely a whole different topic. So maybe I don't want this to be highlighted. So what's happening now, or maybe I like it, when somebody clicks on April, it's now showing me that out of the 4 infants that I have admitted until now, 2 were admitted in April. Okay. So those functionalities, I'm going to click back on April, and now everything came back. So those are the interactions between each chart. So should they or should they not interact? And that's a process I need to go through once my report is completed. So once it is completed, before I share it to others, I should choose each chart, how should it or should not affect the other ones. So my process that I recommend is you pick something first, like the upper left one. And once you've selected a chart or a visual, you can then hit on the button Format. And now the first option is Edit Interactions. So you click once on Edit Interactions. And now you have a new icon in the upper right corner of each visual stating, I'm currently on the slicer, should my slicer interact with the others? And I'm going to say that it should not affect the one at the bottom. It could not anyway, because this is different types of calls and this is children admitted. So it would not affect it, but just to be on the safe side, I set it to no, those are not interacting. Once I'm done, I go to my next visual. So now and a good practice is to always select your stuff by hitting on the title. So I've selected by clicking on the title, and now I'm going to click on one value, for instance, April, and I see the impact on the other ones. And now I can more easily choose, do I like it or not? So definitely for my line chart, I don't like it. So I'm going to say, no, I don't want it to affect this chart. And for the bottom one, see that I have three options now. So by default, it's simply highlighting the portion for April values, but it could, if I click the other icon, filter it down. So when I click on April, the value drops down to 2. I would not recommend this because people, they might have clicked on April by mistake. They don't even realize it. And then suddenly they see only 2 infants admitted. And they think that this is for the whole period of the report and not, they don't understand that they filtered on April. So I'd rather leave it with the second option that is going to highlight the portion for the given month. So I'm happy touring my chart interactions. So now I'm gonna say that it doesn't affect my slicer. Once I'm done touring with this one, I remove my selection. So I clicked on April and now everything is back to normal. So I can click my line chart. So I really need to tour. Pick one chart at a time, make a selection, and see the impact elsewhere. Okay. So I think that's good. I'm simply going to remove that it doesn't affect the slicer, and I'll keep this behavior. I click back on April, so everything is back to normal, and now I go to the one at the bottom. What's going to happen at the one at the bottom if I click on infant? No impacts on the one at the top because there's no relationship between counting the calls and how many infants were admitted. Though, why not say that those are not interacting together to be on the safe side? That's all done. I do save. And with that, I'd be ready to share the report. Okay. So, in a nutshell, that's going to be very fast forward formatting. So, there are report themes. So under view, I could add nice coloring. Okay. So there are lots of predefined color types. If I like that one, or if I want to go very wild and put other themes. Remember that you can afterwards or manually define the coloring for each chart. We explored that already under the page roller. So I'm going to bring it back to regular. Move and resize. So always grab by the title to move around. Resize, grabbing it by the sides to change it. Adding some elements. So, once you're done setting up the interactions, remember to click once on the button Edit Interactions, which is below Format, so that those little icons don't appear anymore. Maybe insert, so under Insert, inserting an image, very basic. I mean, it's under Insert and you select the image. Giving it a title, so under Insert you have a text box. So the text box, this is the one where the formatting, you get a little ruler next to it to do so. So you can do your formatting over here. And just so you know, you can select more than one chart at a time. So I select one, hold down the Control key, select the other one, and I can move them both together. Looking into a chart. So often I've been talking a lot about charts, but if I select it, see that you can also build stuff in the format of a table. So I've changed it to a matrix, and now it's displaying the numbers only rather than showing it in a chart format. So that might interest you, but also know that if I go on a specific chart, I can move to focus mode. So that's an icon in the upper corner of all charts. And once I'm in focus mode, I see only this chart, but in the upper right corner of it, I can show as a table. So now I have both views. And if I'm using a report in a meeting, it can be interesting to, when we discuss about a chart, one topic and focus on it, to show it going into focus mode and then to display the values at the bottom. So we can see the trend visually and look at details values at the bottom. So going back to the report, we got out of focus mode on a single chart. So that's done. I save my report. And what about updating my report every month? Okay, so I built this report. I shared it with my colleagues. Everybody's happy to see the numbers for the first 3 months of the year. Now, I close my report. Okay. April, May, June, July. July is now completed, so I get a new extract from my database. Okay, so here under data, this is where I had saved all my extract. So my call contact report, that was my extract that contained only 3 months. So now I'm going to get a new extract from outcome tracker. So where is it? So I went to outcome tracker and I just got 2 new extracts. So what's my update process? Get those new extracts and replace the files in the same location on your computer. Replace the file. Sorry, just before I do this, I'll be wise, and for next course, I'll make copies for myself. Okay, so update process. I bring it and I replace it. So now, the update process, I just got an extract from outcome tracker that has data from April up to July. And now I'm ready to open up my report because we're a month later. Okay. So I'm ready to open up my report and I simply do refresh. Ta-da! So July was added in both charts, and here my total number increased. So this is what your update process is going to be like. I'm going to save and close, and now I can share it to people. What are you invited to do in the take-home is do something similar. So in the take-home folder, so a report, take-home number 3, has been shared to you. So somebody built that report, and to build the report, they used those files. But when they send the report to you, you're now responsible to take a hold of it and update it. But what's going to happen on your end when you open the take-home 3? that file that you'll be opening is going to look like this. If you look at the data sources, what are the files, the calendar, call contacts, student mission, where are the files underlying? If I go to File, Options and Setting, and this is well listed in your handout, Data Source Setting, it's going to show you that this report uses 3 files to be generated. And the 3 files are saved on Julie's computer. So if you try and update this report, it won't work. You'll get yellow error message because it's going to tell you, I cannot access Julie's computer. So if somebody's sharing you a file, if you simply want to look at the file and click on it, we've done this before, it works. But if I'm suddenly responsible to update it and I need to hit that refresh button, I'm going to have to change the links to a calendar file, a report, and a children admitted that are saved somewhere else on a drive that I have access. To do so, I'll select them one at a time and then doing change source. I need to go and browse my directories to find where it is. Okay. So yourself, you'll have in session 3 take-homes all the files. So editing the calendar, first I do so. I'll do cancel because it's my computer, but you go through all 3 and you need for each of them to change the source and browse to select the same file that's on your computer. Once you've done so, the 3 data sources of this report are going to be coming from a directory that you have access. And then you'll be able to use the refresh button. So to practice the refresh process, the first files that you have in the take-home folder are ones with only April, May, June. And once you've edit the data source links, you'll be able to find in July updates extracts to replace the call contact report and children admitted. Woo. So those were last topics I needed to cover before we leave. Hopefully you'll find success using the PowerBI tool. And so you may refer yourselves to Janine for information about Outcome Tracker. Katie is going to send out the recorded copies. And if you'd like technical support on Power BI, I also offer consulting services. So you may contact me directly, or if you know other Power BI consultants in your area. But before you contact me, Google it, okay? I showed you this community online and the Microsoft documentation. There's loads of resources online that can help you out resolve any issues you'll encounter. But if you'd like to work with me again, you may email me at, you must have my information. I'll add it to the chat. So Julie.Foucault is my family name. That's not an easy one, but that's my email address. And maybe we work together, or hopefully you find help online and enjoy using that tool.